Undefeated Monday edition of Birds 365 as the Birds get to 5-0 after beating the Rams yesterday. Joining us to talk about yesterday's game, where the Birds are at, the guy who's trying to serve two masters here to talk about the Eagles, but also keep his October red flow going with his Phillies golf shirt on. Jeff Kerr from CBSSports.com jumps in with Jody Mack and Bill Colarulo. Jeff, I just finished saying that the final score yesterday wasn't indicative of the dominance the Eagles portrayed over the Rams. And it wasn't necessarily dominant up until that final drive of the first half and taking that lead. That was the best defense that I've seen entirety of all last year. The second half of that defense, I said, is the best that I've seen from the Eagles in the last year plus. Agree or disagree? How dominating was it in your eyes?
Oh, I agree with both you guys. I heard you guys say that this was a dominant win. This was a convincing win, I believe I heard on here. And you guys are absolutely right. I know the final score doesn't say it, but the Eagles held a team that basically got 300 yards at will every single week to under 300. And really, this is all you need to know. The second half, the Rams did not score a point. I am not counting the last possession, by the way, where it was garbage time. The Rams did not score a point. They had 50 yards, punt, turnover on downs. The defensive line had their way. The cornerback situation, they put Bradley Roby in the nickel. Bradley Roby, when Matthew Stafford targeted him, was 2 of 4 for -4 yards. -4 yards. That was the difference. Sean Desai made every single adjustment you needed to make. If you guys would have saw my Twitter in the first half, and I don't respond to mentions, but I do read them, I'll say this. Sean Desai should be fired. That's what I saw. Quez Watkins should be benched. I probably agree with that one. But
not that far off on that.
Yeah, but the main one was Sean Desai should be fired. Darius Slay and James Bradbury are overpaid. I didn't hear any of that in the second half, and that's because the Eagles did make their adjustments at halftime, and it showed.
And let's talk about our rookie, baby rhino, Jalen Carter. Coming into this week, really hadn't played more than 50% of the snaps, but with Fletcher Cox out, he plays 70% of the snaps yesterday and just continues to dominate. How impressed are you with Jalen Carter?
I said on my overreactions piece for CBS nationally, Jalen Carter is the defensive rookie of the year. If you look at the numbers, it backs it up. He has 23 pressures. That is the second most amongst defensive tackles. His 3.5 sacks are third most amongst defensive tackles. His pressure rate is first amongst defensive tackles. This is the whole league. This isn't just rookies here. Jalen Carter has been an absolute beast every single week. And from what I was told yesterday, I think Carter might have told a couple media members this. During that 5-hour flight to L.A., all he did was watch tape on Matthew Stafford. The guy's a football player. I don't know how he fell to ninth. I don't really care. I don't care how the Bears passed on him twice. But people's all feel concerns about him, which apparently aren't really much, just behind the scenes here. It seems like that's the Eagles' benefit, and Eagles got one hell of a player. I'll just say that.
And now I'm going to say this, and I don't want to be misquoted after the fact. But the best defensive tackle on the field yesterday was the Eagles' defensive tackle, Jalen Carter. That includes a guy by the name of Aaron Donald. I'm not saying he's going to have the career that Aaron Donald has had. Don't quote me as having said that. What I did say was on the field yesterday, Jalen Carter was the best defensive tackle, and that included Aaron Donald. So for one day, he was better than the best defensive tackle the National Football League has seen in a decade, if not 2 or 3, which is saying a whole hell of a lot. Jeff, he is just so quick. The thing that really grabs your eye is when he's going past the 1 or 2 deep offensive linemen that they're putting in his way. He gets by them in the blink of an eye. This kid is unbelievably fast and quick, and you can't just teach that to a guy of his size. Either you have it or you don't, and he absolutely has it, does he not?
As a guy who prides himself on watching football in the trenches, and I don't look like it, but I used to play defensive line at one point, I've never seen a player get as low as Jalen Carter does since Aaron Donald. And I'm talking prime Aaron Donald here, not 31-year-old Aaron Donald, who still gets pretty low, by the way. But Jalen Carter, like you said, Jody, he's quick. That burst is incredible. And he has so much leverage once the ball is snapped. I'm not surprised he doesn't beat offensive linemen every single time. I mean, you have to double team Jalen Carter now to stop him, which is why Fletcher Cox has had the year he's had. I know he didn't play yesterday, but he's had a good year. Jordan Davis is having a good year. Now Hassan Reddick is benefiting from Jalen Carter because you got to stop him. You can't stop both of them. Can't double team both. I just haven't seen a player this impactful this early in his career since Aaron Donald. Which is crazy. Gerald McCoy, this early in his career, was dominant like this too. I'm just amazed every time I watch Jalen Carter, and then when I rewatch the games, it's just incredible what this guy is able to do so fast. And I saw it in training camp. I said this guy's going to be good. I was telling John McMullen this, and Kratz, Martin Frank. Most of the guys you have on here, we all said we thought this guy was going to be good. I didn't think he was going to be this good this quick.
Yeah, I don't know who could have thought he'd be this good this early in his career because
Howie
he really
Roseman,
is.
that's about it.
Yeah, he is dominating. And it's funny. You watch those. There's a Chicago Bears video going around where they're celebrating that trade with the Eagles on draft night. And well, how could you pass up on this guy? But you mentioned Hassan Reddick, and I know he's been getting quarterback pressures, but it just wasn't passing the eye test. He didn't look like the same guy we saw last season. But you saw that last night. I think he had his first multi-sack game since the NFC Championship game against Brock Purdy. Did you think that was Hassan Reddick's best game this season?
Oh, absolutely. So don't you guys think it's coincidental that Hassan Reddick tells us 2 weeks ago, I got the club off. He's got 3 sacks since. It's clear that the cast was affecting Hassan Reddick being able to put his hand in the dirt, being able to do whatever he needed to do. But yeah, Hassan Reddick was the closer yesterday. Back-to-back plays, he has a sack. I thought he was actually going to force a fumble on Matthew Stafford on that last one. That's how hard he hit him. But yeah, Hassan Reddick, and again, you guys got to remember, he got off to a slow start last year too and really picked it up in the second half. He wasn't the Hassan Reddick we came to know until the second half of the season. We're starting to get that a little earlier now, and I think Hassan Reddick is starting to get favorable matchups too on the offensive line. Remember, he played some pretty solid right tackles early in the season, and then when you're hindered too with the thumb injury, I think that's all past him now. But yeah, yesterday was the first time since the NFC Championship game I saw Hassan Reddick.
And we're all singing the praises of Sean Desai here today because of the Eagles' second half defensive effort and the adjustments that he made. I saw a clip from Brandon Graham specifically noting that they made halftime adjustments and every single one of them worked. So I'm here to sing the Sean Desai's praises today. And I give you one more reason why, and this might not go over with a portion of Eagle Nation. He didn't blitz much yesterday. You know why? He didn't need to blitz much yesterday. He basically ran sorry to say this, Jonathan Gannon-like defense. Just go with the guys up front. If they can get home, which they did, if they get the ball out of Stafford's hand before he wants to throw it, which they did, you don't need to bring in extra guys. So he didn't. When he felt he needed to blitz earlier this year, he did. Yesterday, he felt he didn't need to blitz. There was one specific play. I think he brought Morrow from outside, which usually doesn't do. When he brings a linebacker, usually brings him inside. He brought him outside, and it left the whole middle of the field wide open. They didn't have to use the blitz yesterday, Jeff Kerr, and if they don't need to, they shouldn't. Agree or disagree?
Oh, I agree. They actually got more pressure when they didn't blitz than they did when they did blitz. I think the broadcast even might have showed that at one point yesterday, or NFL Network, or someone showed it. But I want to add this, Joey Mack, to your Jonathan Gannon point. Sean Desai runs pretty much the same defense Jonathan Gannon does. But you know what the key difference is here? He has a quick leash. Mario Goodrich was owned by Cooper Kupp in that first drive. Out. Eli Ricks comes in the slot. Out. Bradley Roby. Okay, you're my last hope, kid. Well, guess what? Bradley Roby was the guy who got the job. Now, Eli Ricks ended up playing well yesterday, but Eli Ricks is not a slot cornerback. I just think it was, okay, we gotta get somebody in here that isn't Mario Goodrich. And I believe Jonathan Gannon would have kept the same guy in and said, well, he'll get better. Well, no, you got to do this. And that's the stuff Sean Desai does. That's why I always liked him. He's able to change the pieces he needs, but keep the same scheme. And I thought that was the winning move yesterday, putting in Bradley Roby in the slot. And he had nothing to lose at this point. I mean, Bradley Roby's only been on the team 5 games. And, we were talking to Bradley Roby on Friday, and I knew he was going to play, but I didn't think he was going to, come in here and do this right away. But when you're in the league for 10 years and you're a veteran cornerback, this is the type of stuff you expect. Now, I still think the Eagles are going to add pieces at the deadline. Probably will be at safety, but Bradley Roby just seems to be that guy that you saw him available. You're like, wait, why is he still available? And turned out he was waiting for an opportunity, kind of like Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, and one opened.
And we're heaping a lot of praise on Sean Desai, as we should. But let's jump over to that offensive side of the ball and talk about Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator. Let's put the red zone aside for a second because they've still struggled there. But I think that was Brian Johnson's best game as a play caller. That Rams defense wasn't a bad defense coming in. They were 9th in the league, only giving up 296 yards per game. Eagles put up 454 yards. And what I found most impressive, Jeff, was on third down, the Rams coming in were the number 2 defense on third down, allowing teams to only convert 27% of the time. The Eagles went 13 of 18 for 72% on third down, which is incredible. How impressed were you with Brian Johnson as a play caller yesterday?
That on to your point, Bill. They were 10 of 13 at one point on third down. That's why they kept moving the chains. I thought it was Brian Johnson's best game as a play caller. And again, I'm not counting the red zone in this because this is a 5-game thing. But I thought this team couldn't run the ball as efficiently as they wanted to yesterday. But the designs he was using to kind of get the Rams defense off their toes, and the only plays I don't like Brian Johnson calls, they're not even plays that I don't know what the play is because Jalen Hurts rolls to his right so quick and there's nothing there. Like Jalen Hurts is trying to look for so I don't know if that's shots. I don't know if that's Hurts. It's something I would have to ask one of them. But overall, I like how he stuck to the running game. 39 passes, 39 runs. That's what ended up happening. And Swift wasn't as effective until later in the game. Gainwell wasn't as effective until later in the game. Jalen Hurts was their running game for a lot of that game. But I think Brian Johnson knows his strengths and his weaknesses. That this week it was, okay, we got a matchup advantage with Dallas Goedert. Let's use it early. They did that. Then it was, okay, A.J. Brown just seems to get open against anybody. Let's do that. Now it's, okay, let's stop the run. Let's stop the run. Let's go to the run. And all of a sudden you saw Jalen Hurts moving out of the pocket, design runs by Jalen Hurts. Then DeAndre Swift was able to be effective in the second half. It was just the way modern football is now. Use the pass to set up the run. And eventually you have a balanced playbook. Now, I know a lot of teams like to do 60-40 now, but Brian Johnson, he's starting to get a feel for play calling. They just got to figure out the red zone thing.
They put up over 450 yards of offense yesterday. That's pretty damn impressive. A couple more points because of red zone. I get it. But they were a dominant offensive team yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw any of this afterwards, if anybody got any comments from the locker room. But there was one juncture in the second half where Jason Kelce went face-to-face with Nick Sirianni on the sidelines. And I'm doing my best to try and read lips, and I couldn't quite figure out what he was saying. And then afterwards, he actually laid hands on Jeff Stoutland, bumped him. You're not supposed to be touching your car. I know he's Jason Kelce. I know he's a Hall of Famer. I know he's the most popular guy here in town, but he was getting into it pretty good with his coaching staff yesterday. Have any of you guys seen reports as to why he was as worked up on the sideline as he was?
I don't think I'm going to know the answer to that till Wednesday or Thursday, to be honest with you, whenever Jason is available. And Jason will probably own up to it and say he shouldn't have done that. I just think it's the heat of the moment. I think this all stemmed from they had the big third down play, and no one just seemed to get ready. And I'm like, where is everybody? And you see Jason Kelce just flipping out. And I think Jason Kelce basically called his own number and said, I'm going to the C gap. I'm blocking that back. You do what you got to do here. And I think Jason Kelce was told, hey, we don't do that here. And I think that's what flip Kelce off. But, I'm curious to hear his side of the story. I'm curious to hear it. I don't think Nick was asked about it yesterday. I'm sure he'll be asked about it today. But it just seems, you're right, Jody. It just seems to be blown under the rug because it is Jason Kelce. But I did make a joke yesterday. The Eagles do lead the NFL in sideline discussions this year, no matter who it is.
And word to the Eagles PR staff ahead of time. They did show that. As I just stated, I saw it on my TV, face to face with the head coach, and actually laid hands on Jeff Stoutland. Make sure both of those coaches know that ahead of time, because the last time when they had the A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts discussion, Sirianni tried to go down the road with, what are you talking about? Oh, sorry, coach, they had you on TV. Everyone in the world saw it, so don't be trying to dodge it. Make sure all your coaches know that question is coming at some point over the next couple of days.
Kelce was asked about it. There was a video clip circulating on Instagram, and basically what he said is he always tends to be more emotional and demonstrative with people he really cares about and respects. And what he chalked it up to was they're frustrated in the red zone, that they haven't been able to convert in the red zone, and that he was just frustrated and he let his emotions get the best of him. But he always seems to be over emotional with people he cares and respects, like Sirianni and Stoutland. So he tried to spin it a little bit there. But I understand his frustration in the red zone, because as good as the offense was yesterday, and as good as we've seen them improve week after week in every other aspect, the red zone continues to struggle. They were number 24th in the league coming into this game, and they were going against a defense who, although they've been playing well, the Rams haven't been good in the red zone. They were the 26th ranked defense in the NFL, allowing touchdowns 70% of the time. And the Eagles go 2 of 6. Now, that number gets a little bit skewed because they weren't trying to score at the end of the game, but 2 of 6 in the red zone's not going to cut it. What do you think they can do differently, Jeff, in the red zone to try to convert touchdowns?
I'm glad you asked that, Bill. I know the answer wasn't available yesterday, and it's a player the Eagles necessarily don't like, but get Rashad Penny in the damn game when he's healthy. I'm just going to say it right now. That's what he's there for. The red zone. He's not. The guy's 6'1". You got to change it up. I like Kenny Gainwell. I know that's the guy that I trust there, but he's not getting it done in the red zone. I love DeAndre Swift. He's not getting it done in the red zone. That's not his game. And he has scored a couple red zone touchdowns this year. You need a bigger back in there. You need to go to more 12 personnel in there. Maybe this is where Grant Calcaterra comes into the mix. Run more 12 personnel. They run too much 11 in the red zone. And I know everybody likes to blame Wes Watkins. He's a popular target to blame. Umali's the key of saying scoring those touchdowns here. They just got to get a lot out of this 11 personnel and trying to force a Jalen Hurts touchdown pass when they really don't have to. Use Rashad Penny, get to the 2, and use the tush push. I know they don't like. The players told me they don't like it. It's called the tush push. But use that and score touchdowns every single time. That's what I would do. I'm not an NFL coach, but you got to change some things up in personnel. I think the concepts are working. I think the scheme is working. I just don't think you have the right players in there.
They've got an unstoppable play for 1 or 1.5 yards. They're going to come up with an unstoppable one for about 4 yards out, because you're right. That is one area where they haven't been able to be as dominant as they are on the call it brotherly shove, call it tush push. My personal favorite, cheek sneak. I know it's running third, the most popular category, but I think that one actually is the best.
JAKIB, by the way, Jody, do we like the brotherly shove? I'm not a fan of that name.
I like cheek sneak. I'm sticking with cheek sneak. Everybody
Bill, what do you think?
We all know.
I'm a fan of the brotherly shove. I
Okay.
like it. Ties in because it ties in Philly, because we're the best team at it by far. So I like that it ties in a little bit of Philly. Tush push, nothing for Philadelphia.
I think the players like brotherly shove. I just don't think they like tush push because that's what King and everybody else called it. And, King wants it banned. Heaven forbid you want to play from the 40s and 50s banned, but you allow flea flickers.
All right. Let me get your take on this. I got to confess, I did a pretty good 180 on this one. I was not as outspoken as Peter King and the other detractors of the cheek sneak, tush push, brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it, as others. But I did say it looked like a rugby scrum. And is that what we want in the National Football League of rugby play? And I said, they used to ban it. Then they decide to put it back. It's like not like they've been doing it for 80 years. It used to be an illegal play. And then they decide to legalize it again. Now they're contemplating taking it out again. Here's why I'm going to become a massive fan of keeping the cheek sneak in play. I think that it has become more of a anti-Eagle thing than an ugly football thing. I think the rest of the National Football League is just ticked off that the Eagles have become so proficient in this. And now other teams have tried and can't beat them. We got to figure out. We got to use it too. They can't get it done because they don't have Jalen Hurts. That's why it's that good here in this town. Don't want to take anything away from the offensive line, but it's Hurts' ability to just move the pile with his unbelievable leg strength that I don't think it's we've got to do away with it because it's not entertaining football. I think we got to do away with it because nobody can stop the Philadelphia Eagles when they get into that position. And if that's the case, BS that they're thinking about taking it out. Don't punish the Eagles because they're that good at something.
Exactly. So 21 years ago, the then St. Louis Rams were throwing bombs left and right to Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt, and no one else was really doing it at the time. No one wanted it banned. Oh, well, you should stop it. Well, isn't this the same thing? Look, you know why this works for the Eagles? One, they practice it. Two, their offensive lineman, Jalen Hurts, get ridiculously low. When I watch the Giants do it, by the way, did you guys know the Giants are number 2 in actually converting it? Because Daniel Jones doesn't get low enough, but he's big enough where it can work. The Eagles just practice and perfect it. Other teams can't. The Dolphins, as explosive as their offense is, they can't do that. Washington can't do it. I think that's why these teams, the 49ers, I can tell you this. I believe the 49ers are part of this revolution to get rid of the Tush Push because they know that's one reason they can't stop I could be dead wrong on this. It just seems like that's something they would do just based on the third quarterback thing. And, they can't. There are a lot of teams that are good that just can't stop this thing. And it's ridiculous. We can't stop it on the field, but maybe we can get banned off the field. Well, if you're going to do that, Cooper Kupp, the Eagles couldn't stop a Cooper Kupp slant yesterday, the first drive or two. I guess we should ban the slant because a team can't stop it.
I agree with you. And by the way, for Eagle fans that are worried, there's no chance they're going to make a decision on this during the season. It's here to stay. It's here for the entire 2023 season. They may evaluate it during the offseason, competition committee, everything else. And at some point, they may reverse their decision and decide to take it out. But it is not going to be stopped. So 49ers, Cowboys, anyone else who's got fear of the Philadelphia Eagles, they can complain and put rhetoric out there all they want. It's not going to change during the season. It's here to stay. But since you went to the 49ers, how about that beatdown of the Cowboys? 42-10. I pat myself on the back here. I didn't think it was going to be close. I thought the 49ers would win handily. Again, not even I thought it was going to be 42-10. What happened to the Cowboys last night? That's just a beatdown of borderline epic proportion, Jeff Kerr.
I think it just shows you how good the 49ers are. That was the 49ers at their best on Sunday night. Kyle Shanahan dialed every single play to perfection against a defense that's over-aggressive. And I know the Cowboys are going to use this excuse all year. They don't have Trayvon Diggs. Well, Trayvon Diggs could have been on the field. I don't think it would have made much of a difference. You know what I saw in the Cowboys last night? A team that quit on their head coach and quit on their defensive coordinator.
Ooh.
They just looked beaten silly. And you can't dink and dunk your way when you're down 14 to 21 points. I saw their offense early in the year. They're like, oh, Dak's not turning the football over. You know why he's not turning the football over? Because Mike McCaffrey ain't having him throw the ball more than 10 air yards. That's why he wants to turn the football over.
And he tried to throw one deep last night. It was a pop-up to center field. The D-back was the only one in the area who had a chance to make the catch. Dak is not throwing it well down the field.
No, he hasn't been a good deep ball quarterback in about 2 or 3 years now. There was a time where Dak, and ironically, it was when Amari Cooper was here, that he was pretty proficient in doing that. But this isn't the same Cowboys team, and they had all 5 of their offensive linemen healthy last night. They missed Ezekiel Elliott a lot more than they think. And Ezekiel Elliott, and I've told you this, Jerry, I thought he was the worst running back in football last year. And they miss him. They do. They paid him way too much money, and they had to get rid of him. And Tony Pollard, I don't know what's wrong with him. He's not as explosive anymore. I really do think their biggest mistake was firing Kellen Moore this offseason, giving the play calling reins to Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy is the worst thing that could ever happen to Dak Prescott in a year where Dak needed to show up. The defense is what it is. Micah Parsons is very over-aggressive. They do miss Trayvon Diggs. They still have players on there, but I wrote it last night in my overreactions piece. They are paper tigers. They beat Mac Jones, Josh Dobbs they lost to, Zach Wilson 6 days after Aaron Rodgers got hurt. There's someone else in there that's really bad that they played. Oh, Daniel Jones. How did I forget that? Right. Now they play an actual quarterback in Brock Purdy, and you saw what happened. They gave up more points last night than they did their first 4 games of the season.
Yeah, and good news for the Philadelphia Eagles with regard to the NFC East. Eagles haven't really played their best football until maybe this week, and there's still room for improvement. And they got a 2-game lead already, 5 games in. But if we're fighting for that number 1 seed, it's probably going to come down to that matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. I keep waiting, and I'm done waiting for Brock Purdy to come down to earth. He's a good quarterback. He is a good quarterback.
Coming down. He's not coming down, Bill. I agree with you. He's good. I mean, I think, and look, if people are going to use this energy around Jalen Hurts and the talent around him, you got to use that with Brock Purdy too. But I always came to the conclusion, look, these guys are just good. And I agree with you 100%, Bill. It's Brock Purdy is a guy to me. He just doesn't make a mistake. And when he does make a mistake, which is very rare, it's only like an overthrow. It's something that is easily correctable. By the way, Jody was the first guy on the Brock Purdy wagon. I do agree with saying I like Brock in college. So I didn't think he'd be this, but I remember watching him in the preseason. Like, maybe this guy could start at some point down the line. I didn't think it was going to be for the 49ers, but I'll tell you what, he's the real deal, Bill. He is.
I know one guy who got Brock Purdy at 50-1 for the MVP before the season started. Put a wager in late July when it still wasn't. When I found out he was already throwing the football, I said, all right, this is it. I'm in for him for the MVP. 50-1. I checked this morning. There's one site that actually has him as co-favorite with Mahomes at 5-1 now, where Jalen Hurts, as a matter of fact, is 6. Jalen and Brock Purdy both moved up significantly yesterday with their big efforts. Yeah, I've been the biggest Purdy fan this side of the Mississippi, and it's going to come down to the Eagles and the 49ers are going to play twice this year. They're going to play in December, and they're going to play again in late January. Hopefully both games in Philadelphia for Philadelphia's sake.
My biggest concern with San Francisco is right now, does anybody think they're overusing Christian McCaffrey?
I tweeted about that, Jeff, the other day. Now, I'm happy as a fantasy football player because he's on my team. But I tweeted about that is, look, you don't want to play scared, but there's also playing stupid. And they are giving him way too many touches this early in the season for a 17-game season with hopes of going to a Super Bowl. So I agree with you. I think they got to be careful with McCaffrey.
Yeah, and they don't have much depth either. They need Eli Mitchell back. That's clear as day. But yeah, and I get it, work with what you got, but you need this guy in December and January. You don't need him in September and October. You did what you needed to do now. You're 5-0, you controlled the division. Now it's kind of pull the reins back a bit.
And question real quick about McCaffrey, if you were watching the game last night. I thought there's spotters on the field to pull these guys off after a head hit. Did you see that hit he took on that catch? And then the next play, Shanahan gives him the ball right away, doesn't even come off the field. I would have thought they would have at least taken a look at him after that hit.
You know what, Bill? It just seems like that's a team-by-team basis. I feel like if that was another team, he wouldn't have seen the ball. But it just seems like, and look, they don't need Christian McCaffrey to win football games. They were winning football games before Christian McCaffrey. They just seem to be a nearly unstoppable force when McCaffrey is in there. But yeah, I agree. Do they just not trust their backup running backs enough where they can actually move the chains? Because they still got Ayuk, they still got Samuel. I will say, as much as they are overusing McCaffrey, I really do think they're preserving Deebo Samuel by doing
that. Yeah, I disagree with both you guys. I think that McCaffrey is not being overused. He's one of the best players in the National Football League. When you have that type of player, I would use them. That would just be my philosophy as the head coach. If I've got one of the most talented guys in the league, I'm not putting him in mothballs. And oh, by the way, the kid Jordan Mason, I know it's garbage time. The game had already been decided. He played okay last night. You said the Cowboys defense kind of quit. And I think there might be something to that, Jeff. But Jordan Mason looked okay. And you're right, Mitchell's out. They're missing their number one backup. So if McCaffrey gets hurt next week, we'll get you back on, Jeff. You can go. Jody, I told you so. They're overusing McCaffrey. I don't think they've overused him at all. I think they've used him basically perfectly, and all the cylinders are clicking for the 49ers and their offense. All right, Jeff, since we won't talk to you again until next Monday, Eagles Jets. Now, before the season started, I said the Eagles are going to start 5-0, which they have. And I was a little nervous about this game because I thought the Jets were going to be good. I thought this was going to be a Super Bowl preview game, as a matter of fact, and I will be there in my seats for the game next week. The Jets won yesterday, found a way to a little extra motivation because Sean Payton took the verbal shots he took at Nathaniel Hackett, and the Jets went out and won for the Gipper, a.k.a. Coach Hackett. What are the Jets going to bring to the Eagles next week?
They'll bring a good defense. Will Sauce Gardner play? I guess that's going to be the question, right? Because DJ Reed, I think he was out yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, you're down both your cornerbacks. I don't know. Like, I think the Jets got a nice win yesterday. I think Zach Wilson's playing significantly better the last 2 weeks, and I'm kind of glad the Jets stuck by him as bad as he played. But really, he's their best option. I'll tell you what, the guy I'm worried about is Breece Hall. Breece Hall looks back from that injury he took in Denver last year, of all places. And he was tearing up the Broncos before that, too, before he got hurt. But Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, they're the two to me. I think the Eagles win. I mean, they should win, but those are two guys you got to stop. But the Jets defense isn't the Jets defense without Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. I know they still have Quinton Williams. Quincy Williams had a good game yesterday, by the way, his brother. But overall, they need their guys back to have a chance. And I'm glad they won yesterday because I'm sure a lot of players, I'm sure a lot of coaches took that hurt. I know Robert Saleh did about the Sean Payton comments on Daniel Hackett. What's that saying about Sean Payton right now? Because Denver's worse with him than they were with Nathaniel Hackett.
Nathaniel Hackett, how sad is that?
It's great. It's crazy how this league works. And the only thing Sean Payton has done right this season is fix Russell Wilson. The rest of the team sucks.
They are pretty bad. And yeah, it probably behooves the Eagles that the Jets got to win ahead of time. They might have been a little bit hungrier. Not that they're back into the race just because they only won one game, beat a bad team. But I think the win in Denver actually helps the Eagles' chances. But they don't really need that much help because they're 13-0 against the Jets in the history of the two franchises. And the Jets used to beat them all the time in preseason. What the hell? No,
it's a week 4 preseason game, Jody.
It was the worst. I used to work for the Eagles back then, and we would be on the sidelines for those 4th preseason games, and it was, oh man, just run the clock. Give us a running clock.
Over and done with.
Bill, I got a funny story for you. So the only time I ever had really good seats for an Eagles game, I sat at the 50, the first row, the 4th preseason game against the Jets. I want to say it was like 2007. And I'm like, this is the worst football game I've ever seen. And keep in mind, I just graduated high school. I loved watching high school football. I was getting into college football at Penn State. Well, I always was into it, but I'm just coming off watching Penn State Akron, and then I'm going to this. I'm like, I was convinced Penn State or Akron could have beaten both those teams. Those guys are professional football players.
Let me ask you, Jeff, real quick. Any concern? And I think with this Eagles culture and the leadership they have that this shouldn't be a concern, but any concern that this is the quote-unquote trap game? You're 5-0. You're coming into a game against the Jets that everyone's saying you should dominate, you should win, and you're looking ahead at the Miami Dolphins the following week, the greatest show on grass. Any chance of a quote-unquote trap game this week?
It could be. I don't think it is. Personally, I know we love to use the term trap game. I actually think the Dolphins could be the trap game before the Cowboys. Yeah, I think that's the trap game because the Dolphins, they still have to prove they can do this against good defenses. Now, the Bills have a good defense, and they held them to 20, even though Dolphins got a lot of yards. I think the Dolphins are going to want to do this to a good defense like the Eagles and put up big numbers because they got to prove to themselves, hey, we're just as good as them. We're just as good as the 49ers. That's a big game for the Dolphins. It's the Kelly Green game. Everybody's going to be excited for. I just don't hope it comes back to the Eagles' history in Kelly Green, which isn't too good after 1960.
All right. I agree with you, Jeff, and for me, it's more because it's a home game. I think of trap games as home games because you believe that the crowd's going to carry you. It'll be interesting to see. There should be another Eagle takeover next week in New York. Jet fans already given up their tickets. I can tell you that for sure. I think the trap game, if you can just use that term trap, is better chance to be next week against the Dolphins than this upcoming week with the Jets. Jeff Kerr, we always love it when you join us. Thank you very much for doing so. Enjoy the Phillies this afternoon. Hopefully they get up 2-0, and we'll get you back here next week talking about another Eagle victory. Thanks, bud.
Yeah. I don't know if John told you, Jody, but I lost my voice last week because of the Phillies.
Really?
I was at game 3, and I go sit next to game 2, sorry, of the wild card series. I go sit next to McMullen Friday. He goes, "You got a cold?" I said, "No, I lost my voice from the Philly game." I could barely talk. Like,
Really?
AJ Brown was actually laughing off the record, because of, I shouldn't say off the record, but he had to come close when I asked him a question because he could barely hear me. I felt bad.
I was there at game 2 when they closed out the Marlins as well.
Yeah.
They got up by 7-1. I didn't feel the need to scream. Clapping will do just fine. They'd already put it away. JK, always a pleasure. Thanks for jumping in, bud.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Joe.
Jeff Kerr here with us on Birds 365. All right, Bill Colarulo, thank you very much for doing hour number 1 for Johnny Mac. Mark Farzad is going to do hour number 2. Since I asked Kerr, I'll ask you to do the same and look 6 days ahead. Jets defense came up with a good effort yesterday. I think there was some motivation with playing Sean Payton, having him badmouth Nathaniel Hackett the way he did. But it's still Zach Wilson at quarterback. Eagles shouldn't stub their toe against the Jets next Sunday, should they?
I don't see it because I think the only chance the Jets would have is if they had success running the football, and nobody's had success running the football against this Eagles defense. You hope Fletcher Cox is back next week. I just don't think they have the talent at the quarterback position to keep up with this Eagles offense.
Nor do I. And, I'm a Jet fan, and I will be there, and I will be in attendance for the game. I feel another Eagle. Well, like this game, next week's game could be a lot like this week's game, where the Eagles are dominant. The scoreboard might not show it, but the Eagles are actually dominant. I think we got a chance to get a similar game next Sunday, but we got all week to figure that out. Bill Colarulo, thanks for jumping in with us and picking up the Johnny Mac slack today.
Absolutely. And guys, hang around at 10 o'clock. We have the Philly Sports Power Hour coming on right after Birds 365.
So Colarulo will get another cup of coffee, maybe a little Wheaties, and then it'll be right back here an hour from now. Billy, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is Birds 365. Appreciate Bill Colarulo doing the last hour. Next hour, it goes to Mac and Mark. Mark Farzetta going to jump in, do hour number 2 here on Birds 365.